Welcome to my Zulrah guide. I'm going to cover every piece of important information on the boss so that you can get to farming the boss yourself quickly. First things first, this is an absolute requirement. Make sure you have the quest Regicide complete. In order to do the boss, you must get to the boss. Zulrah is located in Zul'Andra. There are a few ways of getting here. The quickest way is to use the Zul'Andra teleport scrolls. Now, if you're an Ironman, you can only get these from the bots itself. And in order to sustain the teleport scrolls, you're going to need to average at least 3 KC a trip in order to sustain the teleport scrolls. Mains, you can buy them if you wish, but that will cut into your profits. So that's one way of getting here. Another method of getting here is through fairy ring. Now this method, obviously you need access to fairy rings, but also you do need to take 1 inventory space for your Draman staff or your Lurin staff, unless you have the Lumbridge Elite Diary done, in which case you can just use the fairy ring without the staff, and you simply fairy ring code BJS to this little island right here. But you do need 76 agility to cross this stepping stone, and then you just run east back to the dock over there. Another method, but I highly don't recommend doing this, is taking the charter ship. I'm actually on the wrong dock here. This dock leads to absolutely nothing. The charter ship dock is actually even further away. So you can see as I zoom out here, it's actually a bit of a trek. Not only that, but obviously you need to pay for the charter ships. So that's going to take up your GP and inventory space. So I would not recommend this, but it is an option in a pinch. Now that we know how to get to Zulrah, let's talk about gear and inventory setups. Yes, I know I am absolutely decked out in max gear right now, and if you have max gear yourself, you probably already know how to do Zulrah. So basically the gist of it is just wear your best available mage and range gear. Okay, let's dial back the max gear and get ourselves into gear where a mid-game player might have, specifically Ironman. So you're going to easily get access to Mystic Robes. You might even have Arums or Perilous Moon's Blue Moon set, right? So that's easy to get mid-game, and you'll also be able to get a Trident as long as you do Slayer. Now, I do have the Trident of the Swamp. Unfortunately, I just don't have the Trident of the Seas. There is a difference. You upgrade from the Trident of the Seas to the Swamp after you do Zulrah. So there's that. Book of Dead for Thralls, and also serves as a mage offhand. For range gear, you know, all the Ironman specifically, and for mains, you can just buy this, obviously. I feel like getting the Crystal Armor set and Bofa isn't too much to ask for. I had to switch accounts real quick just to showcase some more viable options for gear and maybe more realistic to the average player as well. So here we are with the Blue Moon chest piece, the tassets, the full fit. We also have the Twin Flame staff from Royal Titans. This is actually a very good weapon to use for mage and easily accessible in the early game for Ironman, coupled with the Tome of Fire from Wintertod. With the Twin Flame staff, you're going to use your best available fire spell. So for us having 98 magic, it is Fire Surge at level 95. But more realistically in the mid game, you're probably going to be using Fire Wave at level 75. Zulrah does have a fire elemental weakness. Likewise for range gear, the Eclipse set with the Eclipse Adelatl is actually very good for Zulrah as well. No matter what gear setup you're in, the most crucial thing to have is the Ring of Suffering with the Ring of Recoils in it. If you don't have access to a Ring of Suffering, you can also just wear Ring of Recoils and make sure to have those enabled to deal with the snakelings. Again, no matter what gear setup you have, this is the most important thing. Now that the gear conversation is out the way, what do we have in our inventory? Well, the most important thing is the potions, especially the anti-venom of some sorts. The best available potion is the Extended Anti-Venom Plus, but you can also make do with an Anti-Venom Plus unextended, or even a regular anti-venom. However, you may have to sip those a couple of times, and it's not going to be a full immunity type of thing. Alternatively, if you're a main before you do Zulrah, you can also choose to wear a Serpentine helmet, and just keep that on between your mage attacks and your range attacks, just so you're fully protected from the venom at all times. Although this is a DPS loss, There's actually one more option you have to deal with the Venom. You can go on the Lunar spellbook and use the Cure Me spell, although you're going to have to constantly cast that, and it could take up a good bit of runes. Anti-Venoms aside, we also have a Ranging Potion and some Prayer Pots. If you have access to a Saturated Heart or an Imbued Heart, do bring that. But if you don't, I would not even bother with Magic Potions. Those things are very irrelevant. For food, definitely bring some Karambwans for combo eats. So in my case, I have Sharks and Karambwans, but really just take your pick, whatever you have the most of or whatever you're most comfortable with. But make sure you have combo food because Zulrah can hit a max hit of a 41. We're almost ready to dive into the actual Zulrah encounter, but there's a few things that you might want to consider, like plugins that are useful. If you have a Ring of Suffering, this isn't going to apply to you, but if you lack one and you're going to be using Ring of Recoils, for one thing, I highly recommend equipping one, then having one extra one in your inventory. Naturally, your Ring of Recoils are going to break in the middle of a Zulrah encounter. Now, yes, there is going to be a chat message that tells you that your Ring of Recoil broke, but sometimes that's hard to see in the middle of the encounter. So what I like to use is the Ring of Recoil Notifier plugin. On the left of our screen right now, you can see that there is a ginormous Ring of Recoil icon. And when that is there, that just means I need to equip one. In the plugin settings, you can actually scale this icon. So if you really wanted to, you can make this absolutely ginormous and cover up your entire screen if you really wanted to. Part of what makes Zulrah difficult is the fact that there are 4 different encounters of the fight, 4 different rotations where the boss is going to show up in different forms, in different locations in the little fight arena. There is the Zulrah Helper plugin available, so that in the middle of the fight you can figure out which rotation you're in and the plugin will remind you of where to go next. Alright, let's hop into our first Zulrah encounter. The start of every fight is always going to start like this. You don't have to protect any overheads, but you do start off with Mage and you run to the northeast here. And this first phase is the same first phase for all 4 rotations. This is where it starts to differ. So in this specific rotation, it is a green Zulrah spawning on the east side here. So simply protect range and Mage that. Anytime it's green, you protect range. Now here, Zulrah stops attacking me directly and spawns to Snakelings. So we're going to pray Mage to protect against the Snakelings. The Snakelings will do Mage and melee damage to you. When Zulrah isn't directly attacking you, it's going to throw out those smoke clouds like that. And basically, a good rule of thumb is that almost every time it throws out the smoke clouds, you want to run to the other side. So here we get the Mage phase, the blue phase. Now the thing about the Mage phase is that it will throw the occasional range attack at you. For example, it just hit me a 40 range and a 43. Very, very rude. The max hit is a 41. So you have to keep your eye out on the blue phase. You can't protect Mage because it's going to hit that the most commonly. But it will range you. So there we go, first KC complete. Again, while you're doing Zulrah for the first time, use the Zulrah Helper plugin and click accordingly so that it will tell you where to move ahead of time. Let's go into Zulrah again. I didn't need a bank. I have plenty of supplies left. Again, no matter what rotation it is, always start in this corner over here. I did downgrade from my Shadow and my T-Bow just so the fights last a little longer, so I can showcase the encounter and better explain what's going on. So this is a different rotation this time. Our last one, we had a green Zulrah pop up on this side. This time it's the major. Again, it threw out a range hit, so we have to keep an eye out on our health there. Now my thought process between each time Zulrah goes underwater is to move, hit the correct prayer, and then switch gear. In that order, move, protection prayer, and switch gear. Then click the boss. Again, the clouds were coming out, so I made an effort to move across to the other side. That's just a good rule of thumb. With the help of the Zulrah helper plugin and just simply doing the boss more and more, you'll soon memorize the rotations, and honestly, once you memorize the rotations, once you have that figured out, everything else comes much easier. That's another KC. Let's pick up all the loot. Now, fun fact here, if you are in the position to do multiple KCs a trip, there is a chest, a deposit chest right here, so that you can clear your inventory. Let's go in for another KC. I just realized we have not been range potted. Make sure you're potted up. Again, no matter what rotation, just hammering this home, run to the northeast. This is always going to be your starting position. Okay, so we got the third rotation right now. This time a melee spawned in the middle. And if you're using a 4-tick mage weapon, all you really need to know is you can get 2 attacks off and then you move out the way. Basically, when it's wagging its tail, it's charging up the attack. And then once it swings the tail, well, you kind of have to dodge before it swings the tail. So right here, Zulrah's not directly attacking me, so I'm going to swap to Prey Mage here to protect against the snakelings. Some of them are going to melee me, and as soon as they melee me, they're going to die due to the Ring of Recoil. So you can see right now that these snakelings are just constantly maging me, but because we're on the mage phase anyways, it's actually not doing any damage through my protection prayers. There are going to be windows like this where you have to cross to the other side and you can't reach the boss. If you are using a T-bow or a Bofa, you would have the range to do so, but since I'm using the blowpipe right now, I could not hit the boss right there, so I'll just have to safely wait. And that is another KC. Again, I just want to hammer home the priority and my thought process on, you know, what I'm prioritizing, actually. Movement, so that I don't take needless damage from the poison clouds. Protection prayers. Honestly, you might even want to consider protection prayers first in some cases, just so you don't get hit off prey for like a 40. That would be very unfortunate. And then once you're in position with your overheads correct, you want to make sure you're in the right gear to attack the boss. So far the encounter, everything is straightforward. You see a red Zulrah, you know it's going to melee you. You see a blue Zulrah, you know it's going to mage you, with the occasional cheeky range hit that you have to watch out for. And when it's green, you know it's going to range you. However, if you have lesser stats and lesser gear, somewhere in the mid game, you're likely going to encounter what people coin as the Jad phase, although it doesn't really make sense, but I digress. But yeah, what people call the Jad phase. We're going to get there in just a second here. I'm actually purposely delaying the fight so we get to the Jad phase. If I'm not mistaken, after this phase, we will be dealing with the Jad phase. There's 2 different Jad phases. This is the first one we encounter, where it's going to be a green Zulrah, but it's going to alternate attack style. So it's going to range you, then mage you, then range you, back and forth. This signifies the end of the rotation, and usually you'll get it done by then, right? But if you're lacking DPS, it's going to start over. It's going to throw the poison cloud, so you're going to have to run over to the other side. And then after this melee phase, it's going to start a new rotation. Depending on the rotation, you could get the Jad phase on the east side instead of the west side. And the key difference here on the east side is that you're going to open up with Protect Mage first and then range, and you alternate. So that is the entire Zulrah encounter. As you can see, there's actually not too many complicated mechanics to this boss. It just comes down to knowing the rotations. So when you do memorize them, you are more readily able to switch into the right gear, the right protection prayers, and be in the right position. That's what it really comes down to most. and the only way you can improve on that is simply to do more Zulrah. Obviously, the higher stats you have and the better gear you have, it's going to shorten the fight and make things much simpler. But hey, sometimes no matter what gear you have, even when you're sitting in 5 billion worth of gear, sometimes your weapon's just noodle and it's going to be a 3-minute Zulrah KC regardless. One final note, these days you actually can melee Zulrah, and being in melee gear allows you to be a lot tankier. But if you know how to melee Zulrah, and if you're an Ironman in the position with the Noxious Halberd to melee Zulrah, I think it's safe to assume that you already know how to do this boss.